everybody a minute to file in here. Looks like we're live.
There's Dr. Nick.
Dr. Nick's already there. Delete this. Is he? Oh yeah, look at it, there he is. Approve. Send. Let everybody file in here, let Dr. Nick get in. Got some people join us, I see. Art, welcome back, Art. Right. Hey, Dr. Nick.
Okay.
Hey,
Hi.
how are you?
Great. How are you guys?
Good, good.
Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear us okay?
Okay. I'm on. What's
Hear
that?
us okay? Awesome.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So we got some people joining us. We got Art. Good afternoon, Art. Hope everybody's having a great week. Welcome to our weekly Wednesday live Q&A. We do this every Wednesday at 1 p.m. CST. So if you're new to this and haven't experienced this before, we do this every Wednesday at 1 p.m. CST, where we take your questions and answer them live. So we've got a scripted list here that we've gone through and prep and in preparation for today. But happy to answer any questions that you may have in the live chat. So if you got anything that's on your mind, or any sort of aquarium keeping challenges you're dealing with, or even pond keeping challenges, definitely now's the time to put them out there. And we got Dr. Nick, where I'm not sure where you are, Dr. Nick, nowadays. Are you back? Are you in California still?
So I'm right now. I'm in Tucson. I'm at the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum doing house calls on their fish in the aquarium here. So I'm in Tucson today.
Okay. Well, definitely a busy man. Thank you for taking your time, and thank you for providing your years of expertise to us, as well as the community at large here. We also have Patrick from our husbandry team here. So Patrick's got a lot of great experience caring for fish. He does it here every single day with the team, and so that the care and condition of the fish are top notch. So welcome, Patrick, and thank you. All right, so without further ado, I think we'll go ahead and get started. We have a series of questions today, starting with warm weather aquarium care tips. Dr. Nick, I'll start with you.
Okay, so most tropical fish that we keep, either marine or freshwater, prefer a temperature of about 72 to 78 degrees, some maybe up to 82 degrees. Betta fish, 82 to 84 degrees. Discus like it a little bit warmer, but in general, mid-70s is fine. In your home, most of us are most comfortable in the mid-70s as well. So your house temperature should be appropriate for the fish most of the time in the summer. If you have an air conditioner problem, your house can get a lot hotter, and that can be bad for the fish. So here's a couple things you can do. As the water temperature warms, you have to make sure there's plenty of aeration. If, for example, your power goes out and your pump stops, the oxygen in the water will become depleted fairly quickly. So you do need to use maybe like a plastic cup and take some water out of the tank and pour it back in, so it's circulating, moving the water around in the aquarium, and that's going to keep adding oxygen. And you might have to do that every 20 or 30 minutes just to keep the oxygen going. If you see the fish starting to gulp at the top of the aquarium, that means they're running out of oxygen in the water. You need to stir it up again, going all the way down from the bottom to the top, mixing the water. If it's just hot in your house, obviously you can turn your air conditioner cooler if that helps. If that's not an option, and you have electricity, putting a fan blowing against the aquarium just to move air across it, just like people, if we have air blowing against our body, will be cooler at the same temperature than if we don't have the air moving. We lose heat by convection that way. So if you have a fan that you can blow on the aquarium, that can help keep it cooler. Make sure it's not in the sunshine. So if the aquarium is by a window, block off the light and the heat from the window, with cardboard or styrofoam or some kind of insulation so that the heat's not coming in through the window hitting the aquarium. And I think the last thing I can think of right off the top of my head is if the water does get cold, you can take some ice cubes, put it in a plastic bag, and float it in the aquarium. If you're putting too much in, it'll get too cool. So you need to monitor your thermometer to make sure you're not getting the water too cool. But if you have ice in the tank or a frozen water bottle that you can put into the aquarium, and that will circulate the water around the ice, it will help cool the tank water without diluting the water. So if you have a marine tank, you don't want to be putting freshwater ice cubes in it. But if you put it in a plastic bag or a plastic bottle, that will cool the water without diluting it out. Maybe Patrick's got some other thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when it comes to having an aquarium, you want to plan out really well. So if you are planning on keeping an aquarium, you want to make sure you keep it in a really temperature stable part of your house. You don't want to put it in, say in a third floor, bedroom or something like that if you don't have air conditioning, because it's going to get quite warm up there. Generally speaking, if you have electricity, there's a lot of options you can do. They make chillers for practically every size aquarium, and by putting an aquarium chiller on your tank, you're actually physically removing heat from the water. You're taking the heat out, bring the temperature of the tank down. Evaporative cooling, like Dr. Nick spoke about, as water evaporates, the water cools down naturally that way too. So having ceiling fans and just opening up the top of the tank, type of surface agitation will help cool down the water. Turning off the light, huge too. A lot of lights give off excess heat. They're not 100% efficient. So a lot of the energy that they use is, converted into heat. So if you have metal halides, for sure, you definitely want to turn them off. Any form of incandescent bulbs, definitely too. Even some of the higher output fluorescents too give off a lot of heat. Power compacts, stuff like that. LEDs run pretty cool, but they still give off heat. So you may want to adjust your lighting schedule, if it gets pretty warm in your house at certain times of the day.
I know a common fixture for a lot of aquariums, and in the past has been canopies. It doesn't seem to be it seems like people are opting more for that open top, open air, non-canopy approach with aquariums. I know we still have a few systems here, with older canopy style tops.
Yep.
And to Patrick's point, we still, even though we're running highly efficient, modern LED aquarium light systems, still ventilation is a concern and airflow is a concern. So they used to have metal halides and T5s in them, I'm sure, and had ventilation set up at some point, and we kept that ventilation in place because it's still, to his point, very important. So thank you both for that. I got a question here from the chat from an Art, and Patrick, I'm gonna let you take this one because I think you were kind of looking at this one. Can you use Seachem Stress Guard in a mixed tank with corals, fish, and inverts?
So Seachem Stress Guard is kind of like, I guess you'd say API stress. It's basically the same thing. So what it does is it helps repair any slime coat issues. So if you're handling the fish, or if they're prone to, I guess, if you're moving them from spot to spot or using a net, or you could damage the slime coat. So the Stress Guard helps repair that. And it is safe for plants and invertebrates, as well too. So to answer Art's question, it is safe to use in a mix.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for the question. We'll take another one from the chat here from a Samuel Martinez. Can I make ice with the tank water while freezing? Sorry, I gotta read this one over. Can I make, or is it mix ice with the tank water while freezing it?
I think what he's asking is if he can take water out of the tank, like put in an ice cube tray or something and freeze it. Freezing the beneficial bacteria could, ultimately kill it. So I guess it could mess with your parameters, but I think it will mess with your parameters enough that it's going to do a lot of damage for sure.
Okay.
I don't know, Dr. Nick, you may have something.
And salt water is difficult to freeze. Yeah, so it's actually hard to make saltwater ice cubes because the salt it needs a lot colder temperature before salt water will freeze. So you might not be able to do that even with saltwater ice cubes. And with fresh water, there's probably no benefit from using the actual water from the aquarium to make the ice cubes to put back in. Yeah, like Patrick said, the bacteria wouldn't likely survive, and you might even have a little bit of ammonia nitrite or nitrate in it, that you're probably better off just using, you know, if you're not going to be able to put the ice inside of a plastic bag or bottle to float it, and you wanted to just make some ice cubes to put in your tank, probably some dechlorinated tap water would be just as good as anything. The same thing you would use to do a water change in your aquarium with would be fine.
Awesome. All right, moving along here. Importance of vitamins for your aquarium fish. Do you need to use them? Dr. Nick, I'll let you take this one.
Okay, so vitamins are obviously helpful. They're a requirement. Every animal needs vitamins. So we're assuming if you're using a good commercial fish food, the vitamins are already added to the food, and you're using the fish food in a relatively short period of time, keeping it in an airtight container so that it doesn't get exposed to air, which will cause the vitamins to break down more rapidly. It's not exposed to excessive heat, which will also cause the vitamins to break down more rapidly. So a classic example is you've got a koi pond, you've got a bag of food, the food is unopened, and you keep it outside by the pond. So it's exposed to air, it's exposed to heat, it's exposed to sunlight. That food, the vitamins will go bad or break down relatively quickly. Alternatively, you have it in a sealed plastic container, you keep it in the house, you keep it in the stand under your aquarium where it's maybe a little warmer but not hot. It's going to last longer. An average life expectancy is at least 6 months, depending on the type of vitamin C that they use. Traditionally, you know, vitamin C is ascorbic acid, and ascorbic acid has a very short shelf life. So in a manufactured food, probably 6 months. So by the time you're buying the food and putting it, you know, feeding it to your fish, it may have been from the manufacturer to distributor to the pet resale store to your house. It's probably already 6 months old. So to help combat vitamin C deficiencies, which can occur in fish, most manufacturers have gone to using a phosphorylated vitamin C. So it's a polyphosphorate ascorbyl. And if you look on the bottle, it'll say that instead of ascorbic acid, it'll have a phosphorylated ascorbic acid, which has a longer shelf life, probably about 2 years. So you've greatly extended the shelf life of that food by using the proper vitamin C. Now, if you do that, again, you keep it in an airtight container, keep it away from sunlight, keep it away from heat. I tell people if you have like a lot of food, put a small amount in a small container, keep it by your aquarium or pond, put the rest of it in the refrigerator or freezer where it will stay fresh indefinitely, you know, for much, much longer. And then you can just take some out of the cooler to put into your feeding container. So if you do that, you should have adequate vitamin C. And that's probably the most common vitamin deficiency. Another vitamin deficiency occurs if the food goes rancid, and the rancidity will break down vitamin E, and then you can get vitamin E deficiency. So if the food smells stinky or rancid, it's probably no good, and you should replace it. Now, if you're feeding, that's all regarding prepared foods, okay? If you're feeding live or frozen food, theoretically, you could get a vitamin deficiency if you're not using a variety of food. So if you're using the same food every day, all the time, even if it was like brine shrimp, okay, you might be getting a vitamin deficiency or some nutritional deficiency because it's not necessarily a complete balanced diet when you feed one thing all the time. So for those people that are using a lot of either frozen or fresh foods as opposed to pellets or flake food, I would recommend having several different foods. You know, anything from worms to live to frozen, and mix it up, and maybe even use some, you know, prepared pelleted food in addition to that. Just a variety, even if you're feeding pelleted food, different brands, and I like to use combination of flake and pellets and switching back and forth between them, so that gives, again, good variety. I'm more likely to get all the vitamins and minerals and nutrients that I need that way. And then the last thing I'll bring up is vitamin supplements. And you can get vitamin supplements that you put on your food or put in the water, and those certainly won't hurt anything. They're probably not necessary. Maybe some of the minerals for some of the invertebrates, and Patrick can talk a little bit about that. It's not really a vitamin deficiency, but certain invertebrates require, whether it's calcium or other minerals in the water for good growth, there are reasons for adding iodine supplements to marine tanks and calcium supplements, things like that. So maybe Patrick, you want to talk a little bit about that for the invertebrates?
Yeah, and also filter feeding animals too. I mean, you want to make sure you give them a plethora of micro foods. We carry a bunch of different ones, like that, that you can add to the water too. But yeah, like Dr. Nick mentioned, supplements for invertebrates that, shed need to that skeleton needs to harden up again. But most of those supplements, if you get a good quality salt in there and you keep up on your water changes, you should not have to add the supplements, but they are available. You feel like there is a deficiency in your water.
All right, fantastic. Thank you both. All right, this question is actually coming from live chat from Kyle. I've seen a lot of conflicting things online about using softened water for water changes. Is it safe to use softened hot water mixed with unsoftened cold water to match tank temperature? He's always assumed people using pythons must be using softened water. I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to make sure that the water that you're adding to your tank is within, ideally within 2 degrees of the water temperature. If you can get it within 1, plus or minus 1 degree, that's what you want, because you don't want to stress your fish out. That's point number 1. Obviously, if it's going through a treatment system, it's going to be unchlorinated, which is also important as well. So you're softening the water, you're probably trying to remove excess iron from the water. I don't see a huge problem with that. We use softened water here in the coral farm. We run it through a reverse osmosis system after that, but using straight RO water is not a good practice either, because it's stripped of all the essential minerals that you need for the water. So I don't see any problem with using a mixture of essentially warm water. I mean, the only other problem is dissolved oxygen might be a problem in water.
Go ahead, Dr. Nick.
And I'll comment about the mineral content. So if you're using reverse osmosis water, you're pretty much stripping all the minerals out of the water. So if you're using that with a salt mix to make your seawater, that's fine, because you're replacing the minerals with your salt mix. If you're using it in fresh water, it's actually harmful for your fish to use RO water because of the lack of minerals which the fish require for their osmotic balance. So if you put them in just pure RO water, the fish will be more and more water will be going into their body, and they'll be losing minerals out into the water. So that could actually be harmful and even fatal to the fish. Now, you can use RO water to blend with tap water, which I think is what this question was. If you have, tap water that's really high in a mineral content, it has a real high hardness and alkalinity, you can blend that with RO water to drop the minerals. And especially with certain fish like discus, and maybe some of the other of the South American fish that live in very acid, low pH water, very soft water, you can blend RO water more with the tap water to bring the pH and the alkalinity and the hardness down. But most tropical fish, you want a hardness and alkalinity around 75 to 150 parts per million for alkalinity and hardness. And if you're using pure RO water, that's going to be way too low. So you need to blend it. Now, RO water is different from softened water. Softened water puts sodium in place of calcium and magnesium. So the water will take some minerals out and replace them with sodium. And softened water is okay, but you still need to monitor your hardness and alkalinity because they're going to be pretty low with softened water. And one thing to remember, and we've talked about this on past ones, your biological filtration, which is the beneficial bacteria breaking down ammonia to nitrite to nitrate, requires the carbonates, which come from alkalinity. So if your water is very soft and low alkalinity, you'll get poor biofiltration occurring. So you won't get your ammonia broken down to nitrite and nitrate. And there's actually a thing called old tank syndrome, where over time the carbonate is used up, you're not doing water changes to replenish the carbonates, and then your biofilter crashes and you get a sudden ammonia spike, which kills your fish. That's where if you're using softened water, you're more likely to have that problem. So you really need to use a test kit or test strip and monitor your alkalinity, which is your carbonate hardness, KH.
And I know a lot of softeners too, you can adjust the softness level too, so that you don't remove too much of the minerals too. So keep an eye on that too, because if you have your softener, I guess.
Oh, and one more thing about that.
Way down. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you can make it not super soft, but the other thing is I've encountered cases where people have used potassium chloride instead of sodium chloride in their water softener, and the potassium can get high in the water, and that can be harmful to the fish as well. So just be aware of that. If you're using potassium chloride as your water softener salt, that can affect your fish, and I don't recommend using that for fish.
Yeah, I guess we use sodium here. I never even thought to. I know you can use it, but I never thought to do the other way around. So good insight there for sure.
Awesome. A question from the chat from Samuel Martinez. How can I make alkalinity higher? I'll let you take that one, Patrick.
Well, there is essentially an additive that you can add to the water. I mean, you can use sodium carbonate too, or no, bicarb, sorry, to add to the water. Yeah, which we sell to add to the water to help bring the alkalinity up. I mean, in marine tanks, most of the time, there's enough of the additive in the synthetic mix that you don't usually have to worry about it. I mean, you should still monitor your water quality. And I would also check from container to container, because sometimes it does fluctuate, believe it or not. You know, just because you buy the same brand every time doesn't mean that the parameters are going to be exactly the same. So I would check every new container that you open up to make sure alkalinity is. But there is supplements that you can water to bring the alkalinity up.
Yeah, LiveAquaria actually offers our own private label of bulk supplements like sodium bicarbonate, carbonate, magnesium sulfate, and all the others. You can go check out liveaquaria.com under our supply section where we have all that. So definitely go check it out.
And a little goes a long way too.
Yeah.
You know, make sure you follow the recommended dosing, but you know, it's better to bring it up really slow because you could shock the animals. You know, it's
kind of a general rule of thumb, right? Slow and steady.
Test it as you go.
So Samuel follows up, or with old tank syndrome, how do I fix that is also sodium chloride baking soda? Is sodium chloride baking soda?
Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate.
It's bicarb, right? I had to think of the texture.
I know.
Look at it, because the bicarb is more of like a grainy, soft texture, while the carbonate's more of like a fiberglassy like texture. Yeah.
All right. So I think we've got questions we have time for one more question. Let's go with phosphate. How much is too much? Patrick, I'll let you take that one.
Okay, so phosphates are, for the most part, not a good thing to have in your aquarium. Generally, when you think of phosphates, you think of algae growth. And in a planted aquarium, you want to have some phosphates because the plants need that for, you know, it's a nutrient source for them, you know, kind of think of like fertilizer, for live plants. So a live plant in a planted tank, you can have an acceptable range would be about 0.5 to 1 parts per million or so. In a reef tank, you want it to be you don't want it to be 0, but you want it to be as close to 0 as possible. So I would say 0.03 parts per million would be a more acceptable level. I would continue to try to get it as low as possible because you're just going to have more algae growth and more phosphate you have. And when you have algae growth, it tends to lead to all sorts of other issues.
Other fun stuff.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that's it in a nutshell, right? Oh yeah, and you got to be careful too because phosphates can be added from your water source too. So you want to make sure that you're using in marine aquariums. Ideally, you want to use RO water for sure because that'll strip out the phosphates that are in there. Because like I said, you want to get it as low as possible. In a freshwater aquarium, depending on how much phosphates are in your water, you could do the mixture like Dr. Nick said. RO water with some tap replacement. Because a lot of municipals add phosphates to the water, right, Dr. Nick, to help protect, older pipes?
Yeah, the phosphate is added to keep lead from leaching out of pipes into the water. And so your local tap water may be high in phosphate. And if you're having algae problems in your aquarium, you probably have high phosphate. In general, phosphate accumulates in the aquarium. And you will, keep getting higher and higher unless you're doing water changes. But if your tap water has phosphate in it, then the water change might not help. So you do want to get a phosphate test kit or test strip, measure your tap water as well as your tank water phosphate level. I like to keep it about 0.3 to 0.5 in fresh water. And like you mentioned, in a heavily planted tank, it might be higher, and that's okay. But if you don't have a lot of plants and your phosphate is higher than that, you'll see much more algae growth. And if you do have high phosphate and your tap water has high phosphate, so you can't do water changes, obviously use RO water if necessary and blend it, but you can buy phosphate neutralizers, either a powder that you can mix in the water which will precipitate the phosphate, or a resin that can be put into a filter that will absorb the phosphate into it, and then you periodically have to change that. So there are a couple of options available to remove phosphate if you see that it's high in your aquarium water.
Awesome. So I know I said that was the last question, but since we started late, I'm actually going to let us slip one more in. I think this one just came at the end of the list towards the end of the, shortly before we started today. Again, for Patrick, we'll start protein skimmers benefits and need one.
So protein skimmers are, I think, in my opinion, you can't really have a saltwater tank without one. It's like, honestly, it's like doing a small water change all the time, because what you're actually doing is you're removing that organic matter, waste matter, whatever you want to call it, before it's actually converted into nitrates. So what you're doing is you're actually, this piece of equipment will actually collect that dissolved waste into a collection cup, so into a nice concentrated skimmate, and then you actually just dump it down the drain. So it's like doing a water change all the time. In my opinion, it pays itself pretty quickly. They are kind of finicky, so you got to make sure you're constantly monitoring them. If you have one that goes inside of a sump, which are probably the easiest to work with because they are finicky, they tend to overflow, flood your house. But if you put one inside the sump, you got to make sure that the water level remains the same, because that's a huge problem. Because if water evaporates, if the water level goes down, it will actually, the efficiency of the skimmer will go down. So you produce more concentrated skimmate versus a higher water level where you actually have a more diluted skimmate. So they are finicky, so you got to work with them. Constant monitoring. Sometimes it's just as easy as just opening up the stand door, peeking at them. All right, yep, looks good. Close the door. And if you do that daily, you can get a good rhythm of having a skimmer. But I can't see nowadays, with the price of them, and how efficient they've become, to not have one in a saltwater aquarium. Freshwater guys, on the other hand, it's a lot harder to make bubbles in freshwater. Honestly, it's just better to have a really good biological filter in a freshwater tank. Try and figure out a skimmer for fresh.
All right, Dr. Nick, last word on this, and then I think we can go ahead and wrap this one up.
Okay, yeah, I think Patrick summed it up really well. They do not work as well in fresh water because, again, they don't form the bubbles of protein in the dissolved organic compounds. But the one thing I will add is they will remove medication from your water. So if you're treating an aquarium with medicine, just be aware your protein skimmer will take it out. So you need to turn it off if you want the medicine to stay in. But once you're, finished with the medication, you turn your protein skimmer back on and it'll bubble it up and take it out with the skimmate. So they are both good and bad for that. If you don't want them to take the medicine out, make sure you shut it off. But it will take medicine out of your water when you're ready to do, a water change or to take out the medicine after treatment.
Awesome.
Yeah, some medications will cause them to go absolutely berserk. I know erythromycin is one of them. I mean, it'll be like your whole place will be flooded with foam, so definitely keep that in mind.
Foam party.
Yep.
Of the wrong kind.
Melatonin.
Let me tell you that.
Oh yeah, Melafix too. Yep. Yeah, for sure. It's like, bubbles everywhere. Bubble bath.
All right. Well, I think that goes. That should go ahead and wrap this week's live Q&A. Real quick, thank you, Dr. Nick. Thank you, Patrick, for taking time out of your busy schedules to come online and answer our questions. Really helpful. Really appreciate it. We hear right at the end from Art. Thank you, as always. Thank you for your service. We even got Patrick to smile today. So believe it or not, this guy does smile. It does happen. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining in first and foremost. Look forward to this every week. As always, if you have your questions, if you got a question for us, go ahead and send it along, and we'll add it to our list. But until next week, hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on Monday at 7:30 p.m. CST for our live dive sale event. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.